Hello, my name is Am, and welcome back to my channel on Shingeki Day. Now then, once again, thank you for joining me and giving me your time, for this final season of Shingeki, as I do my best and do my part in exploring each episode as much as possible, and treating each episode with respect. Of course, that last episode, a bitter ending, as it gave us the first major death of the season. Unfortunately, it was a goodbye to Sasha, one of the OGs. Sad moment for sure, even though it was quite sudden, right? It was so jarring given the sudden nature of it and the random act that caused it, right? But yeah, again, one of the standout moments of that episode is the conclusion, or the reaction from Eren Yeager at that moment in time. That really sparked a bit of an interesting discussion point, didn't it? But yeah, I'm interested to see the direction it heads into now, right? Because that certainly felt like it concluded that whole Liberio conflict, right? So yeah, let's see how it plays out. Now, before I get into that, if you're interested in early access to the next episode right now, or maybe even full length to this episode, consider checking out the Patreon page. It is just an option for anyone who is interested in supporting the channel beyond the scheduled content, right? That option is there for you if you're interested. The link is in the pinned comment and the description. So, consider checking out the different listings there, and also check out the plans for, anime in 2021 and beyond. I hope to get to a handful of them this year in 2021, so check out the different listings there if you're interested. And if you really do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Right then, so that's about it for the intro. Let's get into the episode. I hope you enjoy. Armin? Oh, there's the conch. Oh, look at this. So he is in... Oh, they're doing it. They're showing it. Yelena? Oh, just like Kruger. It's a devil. Just like the struggle for trust. The boulder. Oh. Classic music too. Oh, Sasha. Anya Capone? Aha! So this is how it played out. Is that right? She is fascinating, that's for sure. Much like Zeke. Alright then. I love a good flashback. The huge lady, just like Brienne. That's true, but look at the framing of that shot. Eren just by himself, opposite to all of his dear friends. Mobley would have been going crazy. That's more than the population, isn't it, of Paradis? Can't blame her though. Imagine finding that out. Preoccupied Hanji-san. Oh.
一つは島に放った無垢の巨人が最新鋭の兵器をもってしても未だ上陸困難な障害であること。マーレがエルディア人を壁の中に幽閉するための政策でしたが、逆に進軍からエルディアを守る存在となっているのです。
How about that?
らしいな、そいつは笑える。
Isn't it? Hitcho.
もうすぐ夜が明け、巨人が活動する頃ですよね。今我々が壁の外でのんびりお茶できるということは。島の巨人をすべて殺してしまった。いや、素晴らしい。期待以上だ。
She's impressed.
二つ目の理由は、現在マーレは 複数の国と戦争状態にあり、マーレに故郷を奪われ、兵士として徴用された我々は彼に導かれるまでは、マーレや世界の人々が悪魔と呼んで恐れる巨人、私には全く別のものに見えた。神です。無力な私たちに希望を見せてくれました。
Oh. Yeah.
反マーレ義勇兵です。その目的は全エルディア人の解放。
Whoa.
ジーク・イエーガーの要求は以上です。
Whoa.
すべては生存が危ぶまれる。
そんなバカな話に乗るものか。相手は獣の巨人。
Yeah, this was definitely bound to happen.
巨人に変え、壁内を恐怖に陥れ。
Yeah, Connie.
壊滅寸前まで殺戮した張本人がそう抜かしたのか。
Look at Flock.
奴らの目的は終始一貫して始祖の巨人の奪還。
Always, right?
エルディア人の問題を一挙に解決する秘策があると。その
To
秘策
solve
を
the
行う
Eldian
条
issue.
件として必要なものが始祖の巨人と王家の血を引く巨人。二つが揃えば世界は救われる。ただし、
The world can be
そ
saved.
の秘策を明かせるのは条件が揃ってからだ。
その巨人は父の妻であったダイナの秘密に違いありません。
All those memories coming back, man.
ダイナの息
Great
子である
memories of
ジ
the
ーク
show.
は解明したのでしょう。不戦のちぎりを出し抜く術を
He's finally getting confirmation
我
for
々エル
his
ディア人に残された
conclusion
唯一の
from
希望を壁に潜む幾千万もの巨人で世界を踏み潰す
yeah.
地ならしの発動条件を
どうして今までそんなことを黙っていやがった。
Historia.
ヒストリアの身を案じたからです。俺の不確かな情報で巨人にさせるわけにはいかないと思っていました。
But now he put it out there in the open
警察の判
now.
断であったことを認めます。
ずっと助け
Whoa, look at her. She's loving this, man. Look at her. Whoa.
確かに僕たちエルディア人は世界から恐れる。
That's from the season 3 end credits, isn't it?
世界はずっと複雑で
Yeah.
知らないことだらけだった。
ところで、おにゃんぽこんはなんで肌が黒いのですか？
I mean, yeah, fair enough, I suppose, right?
俺たちを作ったやつはこう考えた。いろんなやつがいた方が面白いって
The
な。
lantern again.
君たちユミルの民も同じさ。俺たちは求められたから存在する。始祖ユミルに力を与えた存在。
Whoa.
神だよ。
Not the devil, but God.
そう考えるやつもいる。考えるだけなら自由だろ。
I like how he presented that. That's a non-Eldian saying that, right? He called them you subjects of Ymir.
生臭そう。
海の
Oh,
幸は
look
初
at
めてですか？
this.
ニコロはマーレ料理の達人なんですよ。
Okay.
お前らなんかに食わせてやる。
Those screams, man. Food, bringing people together since forever. For a chef, that's like the ultimate compliment, right? Look at that.
もうすぐ港が完成するん
Transition
だ。
though.
マーレの公平の力を
Oh, that's also from
す
the
ごく早く進むようになってさ。
よく協力してくれたね。
season 3 end credits. I thought it was Mikasa, but it was him.
時間をかけて肩書きを
Ah,
武
look
器
at
にして
this.
人同士向き合えばきっと分かり合える。
ベルトルトの記憶は何か見たか？
ああ、いや役に立ちそうな。
He seems a bit.
時間はねえぞ。ジークの寿命はあと3年もね。
誤解を解けば。
They're not gonna listen.
誤解って何のことだよ。
だから僕たちは怖くないって。
世界から見れば俺たちは巨人に化ける怪物だ。
Wow.
そこに誤解はないだろう。
He's keeping it real. And you can see that his mindset is kind of
時間をかければ。
time.
そう、
They don't have time.
時間が必要だ。
時間を稼ぐためには。
Right. He bought them some time, that's for
し
sure.
てやるんだ。
I find it interesting that. Oh. Oh.
本当に僕たちはた
That
だ
transition, though. Wow.
そればかり考えてしまう。 誰よりもエレンを理解しているつもりだった。ミカサよりも。でも、もうわからない。
Oh.
あれしなんか近づけんじゃねえよ。おいニコラ、大丈夫。
It is the chef.
くそ、なんでだよ。本当にサシャは死んだのか。なあ。飛行船に乗り込んできた子供に撃たれたって、そんなバカな話があるかよ。
I mean, it's not just any kid though.
ただの女の子じゃない。訓練されていた。
Yeah.
戦士候補生か。俺の油断があったわ。
This music reminds you of Ymir from the season 2 finale.
なんで俺に謝る。俺はただ飯を用意してただけだ。
That means you did everything for her, man.
あいつにうまいもんいっぱい食わしてくれてありがとな、ニコラ。俺とサシャは双子みてえなもんだった。自分が半分なくなっちまったみてえだ。
Connie.
娘が世話になったようやね。
Oh, and is that the girl from season 2 episode 2? Oh, her father, man. I remember him. He's a great man. Great man.
娘さんは俺の料理を誰よりもうまそうに食べてくれました。だからもしよかったら俺の料理を食べに来てください。もちろんただなんやろ。はい。
That's beautiful. Look at that. Didn't hesitate. That he's a Marlene. Oh.
戦勝と報じたわけか。恐ろしいね。
Ah, interesting.
寛大なお言葉に感謝いたします。だが、俺を
Those
エレンと
glasses
合
though,
わせる
man.
のが先だろ。
Such a unique design.
そう急ぐな。お前に最上級のホテルを用意したんだ。
I'm sure you
まずはそこ
do.
でゆっくり休んでいただこ
なあ、睨むの。
I love these two together. I love this.
マーレから奪ってきた巨人化の薬はこれで全てです。しかし複製は困難でしょう。
Oh,
いや、
they look uneasy.
これだけあれば十分であろう。
Titan serum.
この3年間、エルディア人の友人であることを証
3
明
years is a long time, but is it long enough?
残念です。私たちが持ち込んだこの銃は
They looked uneasy,
エ
all
ルディ
right.
ア人に自由をもたらす銃なのに。
ジークに枷をかけぬわけ。
Ah, okay. So this is present time.
構いませんよ、ピクシス司令。すぐにまた我々と食卓を囲む
It's the same look she had as.
俺のホテル、これ？
う。何か不満でもある。
Forced to the giant trees.
これ以上お前にふさわしい。
Look at his face. It makes sense.
ガビと
I love it.
この雄大な自然を見せてやりたいんだが。
I love it that he calls him Heicho as well. Falco. She's like possessed, man. Look at that.
エレンは一人でもやるつもりだった。エレンに協力しても見放しても最悪の選択になっただろう。あの軍港が健在だったらすぐさまマーレ軍はこの島に報復攻撃しただろう。僕の道は断たれた。けど
It's Annie, isn't it? That music is from the season 1 finale.
君たちのように。
Ah.
ねえ、ハニー、何か答えてよ。
Wow, Mikasa's really out there still, huh?
勝てば生きる。
戦わなければ勝てない。戦え。戦え。
Oh. So that was from. Wow, that scene though, man. Both, showing us both Mikasa and Eren. That was from episode 6 of the series. Wow, and yeah, that was a shot that was spoiled for me. I brought it up in my episode 1 reaction, I think. Him looking into the mirror. But him looking into the mirror and saying that. Quite the ending there. Quite the final scene there. For many different reasons. Now, I get to see this new look Eren. Now, like I said, this is the scene I mentioned, or the manga panel I mentioned, that was spoiled for me. Again, I had no context. I mean, I didn't even know that was inside a prison cell or a jail cell. Now, before I go any further, I find the concept of this Eren Yeager being in a jail cell, confined to a jail cell, kind of comical. Comical in the sense that, he's only there because he's complying, right? He's choosing to comply. And, realistically speaking, if he wants out, he's out, right? I mean, not too long ago, I think maybe in the discussion for the last episode or the episode before that, I was talking about how this individual is like this god on earth now, right? Like I mentioned in the discussion for the last episode, or even the one before that, if he wasn't already this unstoppable, devastatingly effective, Titan shifter, after acquiring the Warhammer Titan, he's this god on earth, essentially. I remember I said something I think I said something like that, right? So I do find it a bit funny that, he's here in a jail cell. But again, that's more of a choice. Clearly he's complying, right? He has no reason to, break out or, go against his punishment. But, that being said, it's clear to see that he keeps drifting and drifting, right, apart from these people, his dear friends, his family. And you can see, again, one of the most heartbreaking things about this episode is that it's clear to see that, Armin, Eren, and Mikasa are drifting apart. Certainly Armin and Eren, they seem to be just heading into opposite, or they do find themselves on the opposite ends of the scale, right? And I felt like, throughout this episode, I felt like Mikasa is kind of caught in the middle, almost. So yeah, that was, and I feel like, it's clear to see that he's going to continue to drift apart, right? And just go further and further. Now, the scene itself, it's a potential fascinating scene because of, again, it all depends, right? It could easily just be this intimate moment that he's having to himself, right? That he is actually literally just speaking to himself in the mirror, right? And he is kind of reiterating his mission or the path he is on and has to stay on, essentially. It could be just as simple as that, him having this intimate moment. Again, kind of showcased his new look. That was a big moment, clearly, right? At the end of the episode. I mean, the dude is, he's... he's quite the specimen, that's for sure, right? Eren Yeager, both in his human form and his Titan shifter form, right? Attack Titan form. And of course, he's looking in the mirror and saying "Tatakai," fight. And at this point in time, that's one of the most iconic lines of dialogue, right, of this story. And of course, the Attack Titan is saying this. Now, it could be just that, right? It could be as simple as that. But the reason I find it so fascinating, as I mentioned, is because, the line of dialogue that he's saying here, it is essentially the same thing he was saying to Mikasa, right? In episode 6 of the series. And that's a big moment for the series, right? Because, of course, that moment kind of unlocked Mikasa's inner strength, the Ackerman inner strength, and that, immense surge flowing through her. Much like how Kenny had this feeling and how Heicho himself also had this feeling, right? Of immense energy or surge through their bodies. Now, yeah, that's the reason I found it so fascinating, And of course, they are showing Mikasa in that moment as well. But, the thing to note here, in my opinion at least, it looked like she wasn't as sure about that anymore, right? As she's still kind of out there in the graveyard. And, that's one of the things I noticed here. Mikasa's really just... Sasha's death really hit her, didn't it? It hit her hard. And multiple times throughout the episode, they show her out there in the graveyard. Now, the other interesting angle here is, again, the whole concept of reliving memories and memories being sent through these paths that transcend space and time. Now, again, they set that up in Season 3, Episode 21, Attack Titan, And, you know, I really start to dabble in that again in this last episode. And then, of course, going back to that episode, you see that he relives memories and gets transported in a moment in time in two different cases, right? He's reliving the memories as his own father. He's reliving the memories as Kruger as well, right? You know, so it was set up in that episode, but it wasn't really explored much further than that since then, right? But again, you know, not everything has to be spoon-fed. It is up to the audience as well a lot of times to dabble in that, or, you know, start to dig deeper. Again, you know, not everything has to be spoon-fed. So, you know, that's the reason I started dabbling in that possibility again in the last episode. Because, you know, there a lot of things that are going on in Aaron's demeanor just really made me feel like, you know, the reactions to some of these things are just really out of place, given his demeanor, right? Since they've reintroduced him. To see him shocked about something was actually quite noticeable and quite shocking of a reaction, right? To see that on his face. And of course, you know, the whole thing of him, the moment he finds out that Sasha has died, the first thing he thinks of is to ask if she had any last words, right? That moment alone, you know, that moment is the moment that made me really want to kind of dabble in that whole concept again. Now let's get back to it, him actually saying this in the mirror. Now, is there a possibility that he could be once again reliving a memory, right? And perhaps at this point, he might be reliving his own memory as that young kid in that moment from episode 6. Is it possible here, right, that he is channeling into his own memory at that moment, much like he was reliving other memories, right? Again, going back to episode 21 of season 3. Is that possible here, that he's kind of, you know, tapping into his own memory? Could it also be similar to him having that moment, right, in the underground chapel, as he kind of has that memory of himself looking back in the mirror, but as Frida, right? So again, transported in a moment in time to a memory of a past holder, right? So is there something similar going on here? That's why, you know, the dialogue is like right out of that episode, essentially, right out of that moment. Could that be a possibility, that he is actually reliving that moment? Like he's choosing to relive that moment. And, you know, speaking of that moment from episode 6, you know, all of us know that moment, right? I'll never forget that young, ruthless, brutal, psychotic looking young Aaron, right? And his piercing eyes. His eyes are, you cannot forget that. He had this laser focused look, but like there was something almost possessed about his eyes in that moment as well, right? It really was one of the most jarring moments of the series early on, to see this young kid, you know, behave in this manner, and, you know, not just behave in this manner, but be so sure of himself, right, at that age. And this is how he thinks is the right method to deal with these people, right? I believe, you know, the line of dialogue was, "You had this coming, you deserve this," as he's stabbing the one guy. And yeah. But again, you know, the other purpose of the scene was that it actually unlocked Mikasa's inner Ackerman strength as well, right? He triggered that by asking her to fight. So yeah, you know, is it possible that he's actually tapping into that he wants to relive that moment? And, you know, he's had quite a bit of time now with all this memory stuff, right? He's had access to his own father's memories, Aaron Kruger's memories. Now he's got Lara Tiber in there, but, you know, not just Lara Tiber, but the Warhammer Titan, right? Even beyond Lara Tiber, before Lara Tiber. But, you know, one of the possibilities I did bring up in my discussion for episode 21 of season 3, Attack Titan, one of the possibilities I brought up is that, is Aaron sending a memory to Aaron Kruger from the future, right? To save Armin and Mikasa, you have to go through with this, right? That was one of the possibilities I brought up, right? That a future Eren Yeager is sending this memory to Kruger, Aaron Kruger. And, you know, again, the strange thing about that is Aaron Kruger didn't have the Founding Titan, right? But he's getting he's kind of experiencing these future memories. So, I mean, you know, that potential is there, right? That Aaron himself might be sending those memories back, but there's not enough to, you know, back that claim. You know, I threw that possibility out there in that discussion, but even now, at this moment in time, even if I bring up the possibility of him actually maybe you know, channeling to his younger self in this moment. There's not enough substantial information yet that I can, you know, use to back this kind of claim. So I don't know, you know, it's a possibility, just like I brought up a possibility in episode 21 of season 3. But at this point, it just remains a possibility. They need to give me more information about how, or even if Eren is able to, you know, do this yet, sending memories. I mean, sooner or later, surely that's going to play a major part, right? There's no chance they just introduce something like that, like something that substantial, right? To not use it again. It's going to clearly play a part at some point. And much more clearly, I think, at some point. But yeah, you know, moving on from that scene at the end there, and you know, actually no, not moving on from that scene. It doesn't mean that it. I mean, yeah, that was my first, you know, thought, because it is the same lines of dialogue from episode 6. You know, it's also possible he's kind of back to a different moment, right? I think he has a moment like that in the struggle for Trost arc. That moment he's kind of, you know, almost about to block the hole, right? I remember it's one of the standout scenes of the series. It's a standout moment from season 1 as well. You know, it includes characters like Ian, you know, dying, but you know, essentially Ian gave up his life to make sure Eren gets to do this and, you know, blocks that hole. He was saying "tatakai" there as well. You know, that's one of the other standout moments of "tatakai." You know, telling everyone to fight. So it's possible that he was maybe even thinking of that moment, right? Channeling himself, essentially, or going back to a moment in time of himself channeling that. It's an interesting scene. I think that much is clear, you know, this final scene. Now, going back to, you know, this concept of them drifting apart, let's go to Armin. You know, you have Armin out here, and this is the present timeline. He's out here in the dungeon, right? And he's speaking with someone who is in a crystal enclosure, right? So someone who cannot, you know, talk back, or someone who can't hold this conversation. Yet he feels that this is the person he needs to, you know, speak with, or open up to, or can open up to, maybe at this point in time, right? This is the person he makes a choice to go spend his time with, right? So I think that is quite telling, that he feels the need to go talk to Annie in this moment in time. And, you know, in that sense, it also kind of felt like a confessional almost, as if Annie is the only one who could understand him at this point in time. That was the type of feeling I was getting from this scene throughout the episode. And I thought, you know, this episode did a great job of, you know, cutting back and forth, showing us Armin from the past, you know, in these past 3 years, and then Armin in the current timeline, and of course the others as well. And, you know, they make use of Eren's hair to great effect to, you know, make sure you know the timeline you're in. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but you could tell the reason they're using Eren's hair in that manner. He was even kind of looking like Ymir at one point. His hair, that is. And yeah, you know, they firmly established that even for her age at the time, even back then in season 1, that she really understood how the world is. And of course, you know, I get even more on that in this season, in the flashback episode, right? Episode 3. Yeah, so she has quite the understanding of how things are. And, you know, Armin himself also has much more understanding of Annie as well now that he has Bertolt's memories, and has even more of an understanding of Annie. And, you know, given the fact that he has Bertolt's memories now, he also knows that Bertolt had feelings for Annie, right? And a lot of this conversation he's having with Crystal Annie is... it felt like it was about regrets, right? That he's kind of still in the past, you know, he's kind of still lingering in the past, you know, thinking of possibilities, you know, if there was another chance, if there was another path they could have taken. Yet, you know, one of the major things that come out of this is that he understands that there is no going back in terms of a peaceful solution now, right? He knows there's no more peaceful solution, yet he's still kind of, you know, kicking himself over it, right? He is living in the past and trying to think of how it could have played out, yet, you know, he's open about it, saying, you know, once they made their move on Liberio, that was it. That was the end of any chance of a peaceful solution in this, right? And, you know, this whole concept of didn't have a choice, right? That's another thing that's been playing out throughout this season, right? Earlier on, of course, you know, Reiner, and then in episode 5, Eren understanding that, you know, they had no choice, right? Now you have Armin saying this, and he also understands that aspect of it, you know, that they had no choice. You know, Annie, Reiner, and Bertolt, that is. But yeah, you know, Eren had no such notions. He's not living in the past. I mean, I say that, but again, you know, who knows how his mind is at the moment. You know, that was one of the things I brought up. How do you even begin to describe or understand the things this person is going through, given the fact that he is able to live essentially in memories, right? Again, I feel like the connections to Bran, the Three-Eyed Raven, are unmissable. And given the fact that Isayama-san is a Game of Thrones fan, that you can see the parallels there. You know, in the last episode, I really get into it in terms of the parallels to Bran. But, you know, in this case, comparing it to Armin's situation, who is kind of, you know, full of regrets of how things played out and thinking of other possibilities that could have happened, Eren is firmly focused on the future, right? Laser focused. You know, he doesn't have regrets. He knows the path he has to take, and, you know, you see that in that final scene, Tatakai. So, you know, he's firmly focused on the future and how things have to play out or need to play out, right? And, you know, that's the thing I brought up in episode 3. This, to me, appears to be an individual who knows the path he has to take, you know, regardless of it, you know. He told Falco, you know, it could be full of hope or it could be another hell, but only those who move forward are going to find out or get to find out. So he's laser focused. And then, of course, you have Mikasa, who's kind of in the present. You know, she's not really thinking of the past. She's not really thinking of the future. She's just kind of stuck in the present. And she's focused on, you know, the loss of Sasha. You know, that takes me to the shooting range scene. Actually, before I move on, you know, I noticed that, you know, in the present timeline, as Armin is down there in the dungeon, you know, speaking with Crystal Annie, and also, you know, the fact that they are showing Annie is quite an exciting thing, right? Because before this, you know, since the season 1 finale, there's only been mentions of Annie, but this is actually showing her again, right? Physically showing her again. So, of course, you know, that's a good sign in terms of her potentially being reintroduced back into the story. I mean, she has been reintroduced into the story, you know, as of this point, you know, as of this episode. So I'm certainly excited about that. But I noticed that, you know, in that current timeline, they're not using Armin as the narrator, or the narration isn't being used. The only time the narration kicked in again is of him speaking of the past 3 years, right? But, you know, going back to the shooting range scene, yeah, it's an important scene. And, you know, I feel like even the use of music here, or the song choice here, the track choice, it's quite important, you know, or it does give this scene some importance for sure. It's the same one they used in The Perfect Game, right? As Heicho is explaining the situation and how lost it all is. And, you know, the commander, the late Commander Smith, is just standing there listening. And he kind of knows the path he has to take, right? There was that same type of inevitability about this scene. You see Eren's demeanor in this, and you see that he's firmly on a path, right? And I feel like that was one of the more jarring things, or most jarring things for Armin and Mikasa, that they can sense this hollowness about him, and, you know, this definitive nature of his stance already, right? So I felt like the music choice is quite important as well. And, you know, of course, this scene kind of shows us the different approaches that they want to take. Though more so it's like Armin and Eren's approaches, right? Those two. And, you know, Mikasa was kind of caught in the middle once again. Though, of course, she was kind of backing Armin's points. Not kind of, she was backing his points. Because, you know, she also wants to go down that path, if possible, right? Rather than the really definitive path that Eren wants to take, you know. But yeah, you know, you can see the arguments for both those approaches, right? Aaron certainly has a pessimistic one, right? But he's quite real about it. You know, it's a realistic take on everything. And you have to remember that he's actually experienced this animosity, this hate for the Eldians, much more than anyone else, right? Through his father's memories, through Kruger's memories, right? He really knows how deep this hate goes, right? Though that being said, you know, Armin is also a Titan shifter at this point, and he has Bertolt's memories. Of course, he hasn't had as much time as Eren, right? With those memories, but you know, he asked him, and you notice how quickly Armin brushes it off. You know, it felt like he didn't want to get into it. Clearly, he's seen some things, right? And he told him that, okay, you know, nothing important, nothing that you could use, or nothing that any of us could really make use of. But he's clearly seen some stuff, you know, that's for sure. He gets a bit uneasy the moment Eren brings that up. And, you know, in that scene, that shooting range scene, you see Armin's approach. He really wants to just talk. He somehow wants to take that approach, you know, get in a position to take that approach. And that's one of the regrets, clearly, in his scenes with Crystal Annie, right? As he's speaking of, you know, if there was another path to take, you know, if this could have been avoided. So you see that he doesn't really get that chance at all. You know, there's some valid points for sure to that approach. Yes, you see, there's proof that there's outsiders, Marlenes, that, you know, that see these Eldians as good people, that they realize, you know, they're not just devils, spawn of the devil. These are just people like us. Yet, unfortunately, it's a minority, right? As Eren brought up, you know, how many, you know, essentially saying it's not enough. This is just a minority. And he even made the point that, you know, a lot of the ones that are on Paradis are actually in jail cells, right? So, but then, you know, speaking of animosity, you see that animosity the Eldians have for the Marlenes that showed up on Paradis, right? You see that one official kicking out at Chef Niccolo as he's, you know, in the graveyard trying to pay his respects to Sasha, the late Sasha. More on that later. You know, it's such a fantastic dynamic. But yeah, you see that animosity, and you know, this is all they know. And I believe most of the Eldians on Paradis got their knowledge of this from Grisha's notebooks, right? They made those public, right? So that's how they know. And you know, that news spread, or you know, Grisha's notebooks are clearly used, you know, and you know, published in newspapers, essentially, and that's how they got it out. And I think public bulletin boards, right? I remember they're handing out newspapers and pamphlets, perhaps. This is near the conclusion of season 3, part 2. So you know. Grisha didn't really have nice things to say about Marlene's, right? Because he didn't experience nice things in his time in Liberio. So yeah, you know, their understanding of Marlene's comes from that. So they certainly have animosity towards them. And I think, yeah, you can't say it's not justified, right? They hear about how they've been treated, how Eldians in general have been treated, even there in Liberio and Marle and you know, outside of Paradis. So you understand the animosity they have towards these Marlenes that came in. And once again, you see the outrage just at the notion of Hanji reading Zeke's proposal, right, at that meeting. And you see, you know, how much anger they have towards this individual, Zeke Yeager, but you know, more so the Beast Titan and the chaos and the madness he caused in his time on Paradis, right? Not this time, but the first time he was here. He did a lot of damage, right? He incited quite a panic, as that one official mentioned. I mean, I say, you know, they're justified in their reaction, but you know, it's, again, animosity and hate, that's never the right path, but you know, justified in the sense that, you know, given the information they have and how they think Eldians have been treated, you can see how you know, there is this animosity and hate towards the Marleyans that showed up. And I mentioned that, you know, perhaps Armin and Mikasa are having these jarring moments of seeing their lifelong friend, you know, this new demeanor he has, you know, this new stance, this hollowness about him. You know, he's so calmly speaking of things like this potential rumbling plan, right? He's just mentioning it, and then, you know, he's so calmly debunking Armin's claims of misconceptions of Eldians, right? He straight up told him, you know, I don't think it's not a misconception. And going back to Armin being in the dungeon, right, speaking with Crystal, and at one point he does bring up this sad notion that, you know, at one point he actually thought he knew Eren more than anyone, even more so than Mikasa. But, you know, but now he has doubts. He feels like he can't really understand him anymore. And who can, you know, who really can? That's a thing, right? Eren, it's tough to understand this individual. You know, it's tough to be in his, you know, shoes. How do you even begin to place yourself in this individual's shoes, right? Given the fact that he is experiencing some incredible things, some strange things, or has been experiencing a lot of these things, right? And perspective has changed dramatically for him. And now you have one of his dearest friends, you know, a brother, essentially saying that he doesn't feel like he even knows him anymore. It's sad, you know, it really is sad to see them grow apart like this. And, you know, before I move on from this scene, how about that transition, right, of Eren shooting that rifle, and that transitions into Sasha being shot. Now, I'm sure at this point in time, everyone and their grandma has mentioned the parallel here, or the connection here, right? Or the, you know, the significance of that transition shot. And, you know, Jean Boy was even blunt about this aspect of it in the last episode, that, you know, your actions led to this, you know, you making the choice to go through with this plan of action, putting it into motion, directly led to Sasha's death. But from another angle, you could also look at it as Eren being ready to make these kinds of sacrifices, or, you know, accepting that there are going to be some losses, these kind of losses, you know. And of course, you know, one of the major talking points of my discussion for that past episode was that he might even know, or it might have some idea of how some of these things play out, right? If he is starting to have these glimpses of the future. Now, let's go to the top of the episode, right? The whole flashback aspect of it. Now, actually, before I do move on, you know, Annie being in that crystal enclosure. Now, I did get to see another Titan shifter, you know, using that crystal enclosure, Lara Tiber. But of course, you know, Lara Tiber is the Warhammer Titan, and it really did feel like this is exclusive to just that Titan shifting ability, right? That she is able to be active in there. I mean, she's not able to move, but she is able to, you know, use her Titan shifting abilities, or the Titan's abilities, from within the safety of the enclosure. Is it possible that Annie's actually registering the things around her? You know, again, she's frozen in there. You know, she hasn't moved since then, but can she actually hear Armin, perhaps? And of course, Armin had that conch, right? That shot is from the season 3 end credits. So, you know, it turns out it was Armin holding the conch. And, you know, speaking of the seashell, the conch he's holding, I'm sure there's got to be some meaning behind it. You know, I'm going to have to look into it. The symbolism of the conch, or the different meanings it might have in different cultures, perhaps. So, you know, I'm certainly going to look into that. Now, let's get into the flashback. As established in the last episode, right? Peak remembered. She told the commander that she remembered that one soldier, the Marleyan soldier, because, you know, of how devoted they are to Zeke, how big of a follower they are of Zeke. And, you know, even though I already think the commander is not going to buy this at all, that Zeke actually died, there's also, you know, this aspect of Pete confirming that, yes, you know, the last time she saw this soldier, Yelena, was aboard that first scouting ship, right? Yet now she sees her again 3 years later, and she's out here trying to trap, or she did trap the Jaw in the cart. you know, of course, you know, that just adds another notch to that. So I think even Peak might know at this point that Zeke is he's defected. You know, that this is staged. I think she's intelligent enough to figure that out as well. You know, so beyond just, you know, making first contact and again getting his proposal out there in front of the right people. You know, the high-ranking officials and Eren Yeager, of course. You know, Zeke actually essentially opened up some of the world to them, right? To the Eldians on Paradis, and gave them a chance to learn, gave them the opportunity to learn more. They learn about all kinds of new tech, right? They learn about a person of color, you know, they get to see a person of color for the first time and, you know, learn from him as well. They see food, they see totally different type of food, right? You know, learning about other things beyond Paradis or other cultures or how other people are through mingling, right? And, you know, you simply have to feel so happy for someone like Hanji getting to learn, right? Getting to learn about all these new things. Her excitement was just infectious, right? She deserves this. You know, Hanji deserves this. I mean, you know, the incredible Commander Smith would have loved this as well, right? To learn about the outside world and how things really are out there. But yeah, you know, Hanji is here, you know, so he's here in spirit. The new commander is here. And, you know, Heicho is there. And, you know, speaking of Yelena or Yelena, I think it's clear to see that this is inspired by Brienne of Tarth, right? I know I've known for a long time, you know, for a few years now that Isayama-san was a fan of Game of Thrones. So, you know, this is not the first time I've noticed a Game of Thrones parallel in this. You know, of course, there's quite a big one, I think, in terms of, you know, Bran, the Three-Eyed Raven, and some of the things that Eren was experiencing in part 2 of season 3, right? As he's experiencing these memories and kind of getting transported in a moment in time, much like how Bran can relive memories, right? Or kind of travel through memories. So I think, you know, that connection is also it's unmissable, I think. And, you know, taking out these scout ships, really, it was a great plan, right? Because at this point in time, Marley has no clue. They have no idea that the Paradis Eldians actually took out all of those pure titans, right? They're still down in Marley thinking, okay, that's something they have to deal with. But again, you know, at this point, it's not going to be just Marley, right? Now it's a point of no return, right? Essentially, Armin said as much. There's no going back at this point after the things that happened in Liberio. So it's not going to be just Marley that shows up, you know, it's going to be this world alliance essentially, right? Now, you know, it feels like a lot of things start to change once people found out, you know, other nations found out that Marley actually lost two of their titans, right? The female titan and the colossal titan, you know, the god of destruction. These are substantial losses, right? And the fact that, you know, the Pride of Marley, the warrior unit, was actually defeated by Paradis, right? Who's been keeping to themselves this whole time, as far as all of these other people know, right? And, you know, the crazy thing here is that no one actually even knows that this whole time, the Eldians in Paradis had no recollection of their past, of their history, right? Their memories are erased. They were erased by King Fritz. So, you know, the outsiders don't even know this, right? So, yeah, you know, but beyond that, it clearly changed the landscape a bit. You see immediately the enemies of Marley, you know, the Mideast Alliance, even though they, you know, Marley did defeat them, you see that now they had encouragement to actually try something, you know, go after Marley. And from a different angle, perhaps it even turned some heads, you know, in terms of the nation seeing that Paradis is capable, right? You know, you see that Yelena is certainly impressed. Now, see all of this, now this talk of Paradis perhaps, you know, turning some heads, and, you know, the perception being changed, it takes me to Zeke again, right? And that question, I mean, it's kind of impossible to know until the story gives it to me, right? But I can speculate, right? And, you know, the question I'm speaking of is, at what point did Zeke decide that now is the time to make contact, right? That this is the path to take. Is it possible the time he spent on Paradis actually, impressed him maybe? He saw their resilient nature. Is it possible that his perception of the Eldians changed, the Eldians of Paradis, and that they are capable, they are resilient? But also, the other dynamic, a new dynamic that was introduced was perhaps once he kind of linked up with Bertolt and Reiner, and they told him that this person named Eren Yeager has the Founding Titan, or he possesses the Founding Titan at the moment. That might have changed some things as well. Now that Zeke finds out, okay, my younger half brother is the holder of the Founding Titan, and the Founding Titan is the thing he's always been kind of laser focused on. All roads always kind of lead him back to the Founding Titan, right? And also the fact that he does have 1 year left, and he, if you go back to episode 2, he said it's more like I have 1 year to try. Perhaps he decided, okay, I need to start taking a different approach now. But speaking of Yelena's relationship or dynamic with Zeke, she essentially considers him to be this god that gives hope to the powerless. Now this is a non-Eldian, just like Onion Capone, who is a non-Eldian because he refers to them, as he's speaking to them as you subjects of Ymir. He's clearly not Eldian. And of course, they also established that, Onion Capone and Yelena are essentially forced to be soldiers in the Marley army, right? Because their nations, they were taken over by Marley. She is a non-Eldian, right? A non-Eldian showing this kind of devotion to Zeke Yeager, and, an Eldian, a Beast Titan, right? The Beast Titan, right? She's showing this kind of appreciation for the Beast Titan, and and that to her, it's it's not a devil, it's a god, kami. I mean, it's all a matter of perspective, right? But also that being said, it's clear that she is not just devoted to Zeke Yeager and the Beast Titan. She is actually infatuated. She might be obsessed. She's certainly in love. That one shot of her as she's thinking back to, that moment she saw the Beast Titan for the first time, and it goes back to her being at the table, right, across Hanji and Heicho. You see that she was almost kind of like in a trance, and in that moment in time, that incredible score that originally played during the carriage scene, right, Lord Tiber and the Commander, at that moment in time, you could have even, or it kind of did feel like a love theme, right, playing at that moment in time. She momentarily goes into this trance, certainly thinking of Zeke Yeager. Speaking of different perspectives, Onion Capone, great new character. I really do like this character, and I love the perspective he brought and how he handled certain topics and how he presented them to people who are kind of hearing about some of these things for the first time. I really like the approach, and I really like the approach Isayama-san took for some of these topics as well, right? These are some major topics, some intense topics, right? Now, at first you can see that it is quite jarring for him to hear Sasha ask about his skin color, but you can see that he quickly kind of composes himself and realizes, okay, this is all new to them, right? And I love how he, explained it to them. But I thought it was staggering that a non-Eldian has this, perspective on Ymir, right? He said that Ymir was created by God. An extension to Onion Capone, there could be so many out there that have a different perspective on figures like Ymir, right? Aaron Kruger, it always goes back to him, right? Anyone can be a god or a devil. All it takes is for people to believe it, right? One thing to note here is that Onion Capone gave his opinion on that, but he also said, people are free to think what they want, right? I thought it was great how they presented that, or how Onion Capone's character presented that to them. On that note, I really do hope I get the definitive story on the founder Ymir, right? And, you know, given the fact that it appears to be her in that end credit scene, right? I think the chances are good. I'll get to it at some point. I'm quite hopeful that I am going to get something on the founder of Ymir at some point. Now let's look at Zeke's proposal, right? Apparently he has a secret plan to solve the Eldian issue. Now, I felt that the wording of this is a bit ambiguous, right? This could be just down to a translation thing, right? You know, the Eldian issue as in the issues the Eldian people are facing, the Eldians of Paradis are facing from outside threats, or the issues the Eldian race presents to the rest of the world, right? Now, I mean, I suppose the next part of this kind of clarifies that. But I felt that it was ambiguous, the way it was worded. But yeah, you know, later, just, you know, in the next sentence, I believe he said, you know, that requires bringing the founding Titan and a Titan of royal blood together, right? And of course, you know, that means Eren finally gets official confirmation about his hunch, right? From the season 3 finale. Or was it season? No, it was season. It was the season 3 finale, wasn't it? So now he knows for sure, right? Now he knows for sure, and you know the really big moment in this is that he actually finally shares it openly, right? In front of everyone, not just, you know, the Levi squad or the scouts. Everyone listens to this. It's out in the open now, right? So that, I feel like that could play a part. That could have some major connotations down the line. And I'm speaking of the whole, you know, aspect of Historia being of royal blood, and that he held that information back to himself because he was concerned for her safety, right? And again, you know, you see Eren establish this rumbling, this stampede of the Colossal Titans as the one last hope for us Eldians, right? He said that right then and there in front of everyone. And of course, you know, I should mention that Historia is back in, you know, finally seeing her after a long time since the season 3 finale. So it's always great to see Queen Historia back in the game, or back in the picture. Now, it'll be interesting to see her opinion on the matter, right? Now that she does know about this, right? That pairing up a Titan of royal blood with the founding Titan, you know, it's something quite substantial. So it'll be interesting to see if they have scenes of her speaking with Eren, or, you know, others, Eren and others perhaps, on the matter. And, you know, the fact that people like Pixis and Mike and some of these other high-ranking officials do have the guard up, I think it's quite understandable, right? And later in the episode, you see that they do turn their guns on them. And this is after everyone's returned from Marley. And you see Pixis kind of leads this. And yeah, you know, now see, this is something really fascinating that came out of this, you know, the batch of Titan serum, right? The fact that Paradis has their own batch now, you know, I felt that was an interesting moment, or an interesting thing to, you know, showcase here. You know, to me, it feels like them having, or, you know, the Paradis or officials of Paradis having access to Titan serum. To me, that immediately feels like a contingency plan, doesn't it? Right? That they have the capacity for that if need be. You can see that they're on edge now, that Zeke is here on Paradis, right? And Pixis noted he has to be kept on a tight leash, right? And again, it's understandable that they don't trust him. You just can't, you know. It's for them, it's nearly impossible to completely trust Zeke, and in addition to Zeke, his followers, right? So they do kind of turn it on Yelena and crew, but you know, you see Pixis is he's not happy that it has to go down like this, you know, given the fact that they've done so much for them, right? He doesn't like this, and essentially he even admits that, you know, yeah, maybe this is devil behavior, right? But, you know, the thing to note here is Yelena, once again, you know, her facial expression stood out quite a bit. Again, you know, to me, it felt like it was similar to her tricking the other scout ships. You know, she's just kind of like, kind of like Eren, you know, I'll kill you all. The first time he comes out of his trance back in season 1. And Armin's just like staring at him. And, you know, again, speaking of Zeke, how about, you know, Heicho and Zeke in that carriage? Once again, I got another carriage scene. Again, that intimate setting of the carriage. I absolutely love anytime these two are in a scene together. I mean, it's just perfect. You know, the back and forth, the dialogue. You know, it's certainly interesting and a fun dynamic. But, of course, there's this constant sense of tension, isn't there? There's this constant, you know, feeling of unease, or, you know, edge of your seat uneasiness, isn't there? And I feel like Zeke is so ambiguous, isn't he? He's such a mystery, and he's kind of like that at all times. And I love his sense of humor. He's got this strange sense of humor, right? And it's one of the traits that's really noticeable since season 4 started. So I love the things he'll say to Levi, right? And of course, you know, Heicho takes him to the infamous Forest of the Giant Trees. You guys know how much I love that setting. And they actually brought it back in for season 4 as well. So, you know, I'm certainly excited about that this location, this iconic location, is being used again. But it's understandable that, you know, they're taking him out there, taking him out of the city, right? I mean, that would just be not a good move at all, right? So, you know, bringing him all the way out here in the Forest of the Giant Trees, that is smart. That is smart thinking for sure. As Pixis said, you know, they have to keep him on a short leash. Like I said, you know, I find him fascinating. He's become one of my favorite characters, and he's the one character I want to learn so much more about, right? But like I said, the only thing that I think he really cares about is Eren Yeager and the Founding Titan, right? They're essentially the same at this moment in time. So other than that, I don't think he cares much for any of these scouts, right? He has no attachments to them, right? So that's the thing that makes me uneasy about Zeke and his followers, you know, Yelena specifically. And I really do hope they give me a backstory for Zeke Yeager. He's one of the more substantial characters that's out there now that needs a backstory, right? After that day, you know, he was really young in that episode. I'm talking about, you know, his story from that point on. I mean, you know, they showed me a bit of it in episode 3, but mainly that was a focus on Reiner's backstory, and, you know, he kind of showed up in it. But yeah, hopefully I get Zeke's backstory. You know, he is a fascinating character at this point in time. Perhaps the character I'm most excited about, Zeke Yeager, man. Zeke Yeager is in Paradis, and not only that, he's in the iconic Forest of the Giant Trees. Yeah, this is kind of insane just to think about the things that have happened in this season now. Now, you know, the story certainly has a lot of animosity, right? And of course, a lot of it is shown in this episode as well. But, you know, I love that this episode has so many moments of people slowly but surely letting down their guards to strangers, right? Setting their differences aside and opening up to new experiences and perspectives, right? Again, it's on quite a small scale, but it's incredibly heartwarming to see this on Paradis, isn't it? You know, you see it play out in that train demonstration scene, right? You see it through Chef Nicolo, who certainly harbored quite a bit of animosity towards the Eldians, right? Yet over time, he became friends with, you know, and it appeared that he became good friends with some of the Levi squad members, right? And it's heartbreaking to say and to see this, but there was even signs of a potential love story, right? With Sasha and Chef Nicolo. And then how about Sasha's lovely father showing up? And it appears that, you know, the girl Sasha saved back then, it looks like she showed up as well. You know, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Sasha's father took her in, much like how Grisha and Eren took in Mikasa. He's a great man. He really is. You know, he left such a fantastic impression in his season 2, episode 2 appearance. You know, he was going around helping people. He was ready to completely change his lifestyle, right? just to potentially aid people who lost their homes after the fall of Wall Maria. And he graciously accepted his offer, knowing that he's from Marley, and he puts his hand out, right, as a sign of respect and friendship even. So he's such a wholesome character. I really do have a lot of respect for this type of character, and this character in specifically, sorry. Yeah, he's a great man. And you know, there's even a potential, again, I don't know if, you know, they would even think of spending any more time on this character. You know, it was a great appearance here for sure, but there's a potential that if he finds out, you know, that they actually have the person who killed his daughter, you know, could he even go and see Gabby and Falco, right? I think that could make for quite an interesting scene, you know, given his disposition. And speaking of Chef Niccolo and food, I thought it was such a great use of it, right? To depict food in this manner, because, you know, food really is the age-old unifier, isn't it? You know, it's been bringing people together since the beginning of time, essentially. People become friends over food. People celebrate milestones, right? Relationships can be nurtured over food, right? Because it brings people together, right? It essentially, you know, gets people to open up. You know, good food always brings people together, and I think Chef Niccolo's food did just that, right? For him as well, because again, as showcased, he did harbor quite a bit of animosity towards them. But again, you know, food is able to transcend cultural differences, right? Language barriers, and, you know, the Levi squad, or the characters that show me in that scene, you know, they get to experience Chef Niccolo's passion, right? And they embraced him because of it, right? Or through it. And of course, you know, it clearly ended up being quite a friendship. It was so heartwarming to see him become friends with the Levi squad. And, you know, you could see that Sasha embraced him for sure, right? And you could see how they would connect, someone like Chef Niccolo and Sasha. And you see that the loss of Sasha hit him quite a bit. At one point, Jean even apologizes to him because he sees how much this death has affected him, you know, and he tries to downplay it a bit by saying, "I just cooked for her. You don't, you know, how come you're apologizing to me?" But, you know, Connie makes sure to let him know, you know, that the things you did for her, that, you know, thank you for letting her taste all this incredible food, right? That she's never had before. You know, thank you for doing that for her. She was like a twin to me. Really understood Sasha, right? Connie. So he made sure to thank Niccolo and the things he did for her. I mean, all of them connected, but you could tell that there was something special there as well for Niccolo and Sasha. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is, you know, this visual motif I've noticed in this season of the lantern. This episode was quite noticeable for sure. And, you know, I'm not talking about just sitting in the background. You'll see in the framing of the shots that they are quite prominently featured in some of these scenes. You know, you see it back in episode 3, in the opening of that episode, right? As Reiner's mom and Reiner are in the background, and you see the lantern up front. And then you see it in the basement in episode 5 as Reiner and Eren are having their conversation, right? Again, there's a similar shot of them in the background, and you see the lantern in focus up front. And then once again in this episode, prominently featured. And in this case, it was so clear, right? The symbolism behind it as well. You know, you see it in those scenes of Yelena and Anya Capone, you know, speaking with Hanji and Levi, right? And, you know, in that one scene of Anya Capone talking about or explaining God, or, you know why different people exist. You see it featured on the right side of the frame. It's right there. It's noticeable. You know, lanterns can symbolize a guiding light, right? Wisdom, love, even. You know, the guiding light that guides your soul through the darkness. You'll see lanterns being used in horror movies, right, or horror films in that manner a lot. You know, it's a reoccurring thing that happens a lot. I've seen it in games. I've seen it in shows. And in this episode, you see lanterns being used in that manner as well, right? As Anya Capone and Yelena are sharing knowledge, right, and wisdom, you know, a guiding light of sorts, right? Introducing these people to new things. And you know, those shots really are some of the most standout shots of the season as well. Those shots of the lantern in focus as you see Reiner and his mother in the background in episode 3. And then once again, there's a gorgeous shot, right, of the lantern up front as you see Reiner and Eren in the background. Yeah, so I really do like that reoccurring motif, visual motif. Right then, I think that's about it for this episode. If you enjoyed it, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. And if you do enjoy the content and you're not subscribed yet, consider subscribing to the channel. If you're interested in early access to the next episode right now, or maybe full length to this episode, consider checking out the Patreon page. It's just an option for anyone who's interested in content beyond the scheduled content. If you are interested, check out the link in the pinned comment or the description, right? And check out the different listings there and the plans perhaps for 2021 and beyond. Right then, that's about it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for your time, and I hope to see you again soon. Until then, take it easy.